Hello, beautiful ones. How are you doing? Rosy Glow here, hoping and praying that the volume is working properly. If anyone does come on, please let me know. I will just start and go as I need to go on. So if you're new to me, I channel Divine Grace, which is the power of revelation that allows us to let go easily of what no longer serves us so that we can actually step fully into alignment with our divine human selves. And we're all here to take that journey at some point in our lives. You know, we're here now at the time of great awakening, which can also be seen as a time of great destruction. Depending on the filters that you're seeing through, it's either Armageddon or the start of the paradise timeline. And ultimately, what we perceive, we receive. I think it's very important to take that on. So I'm a multidimensional success coach. I teach people to deprogram from the fear matrix and to plug into their divine human consciousness, and therefore to really activate that calling, that gift that we each have in us to serve in this world in the most graceful, easy and joyful way, because we haven't come here to be martyrs. We haven't come here to suffer. And that's why I felt this is a very important conversation to have, because it is the conversation of how we move from the wounded aspects of both our feminine and masculine, and we move into the healed aspects, the divine aspects that allow us to live in this world with a vibration of love as the foundation of our being, rather than the vibration of fear. I can see someone's with me. Can you just let me know if you can actually hear me, so I don't bang on and on and on and do a quiet video? Just drop me a little message and let me know that you can hear me, and then I'll carry on, because I've done it before where I've spoken for a good 20-30 minutes and the mic wasn't working and I didn't do a mic test. So please, if you're watching, can you just drop me a little comment and let me know that you can hear me? I'll carry on for now. So you may or may not know that I'm currently planning a Divine Feminine Leadership Retreat to take place in September in the UK. So obviously, if you're not in the UK, it's not going to be very easy for you to get to, but my guides asked me to put this forward, to just step out of my comfort zone and to co-create this space, to invite those who are feeling the heart call to step forward. Sandy, thank you, sweetheart. That's awesome. If you got some cacao, let's have a little cacao toast as well. So, you know, being called to set up a divine leadership retreat is like, all right then, what does that mean? And then being given the information is kind of where I've been at. So please bear with me, because whether you make the retreat or not, this is about us understanding how we evolve beyond the wounds that we've inherited. And we understand that at a time in this world where we can see the effects of the wounded masculine in the collective, we can see the effects of the need to dominate and control in order to feel safe. What I don't think we're addressing enough is actually the wounds of the feminine, and to understand that every wounded masculine has come through a womb, right? Every masculine in this world that perhaps is not in alignment with their divine human selves, their heart-centered leadership and their heart-centered perspective, has been through the journey of being conceived, gestated, birthed in a womb of toxicity. And please forgive me for saying that, because, you know, I'll hold my hands up and say that my own daughter's journey, you know, growing up with me as a mother, was one where I projected a lot of fear at her. Not intentionally, it was out of love, but this was my wounded feminine coming through in a desire to protect. So I own that my womb has been through its own toxic journey to come to a place where I can embody what I'd call my desire fire and feel like it's a furnace that can transmute the lower frequencies, because we're here to embrace the full spectrum of life. Okay, we're not here to just feel nice, easy emotions. We're here to have the full experience of being a human, but from a conscious perspective. And so what we often do is try and minimize unpleasant feelings because we don't know how to deal with them. And so we push them down, we suppress them, we distract ourselves from them. We then project them onto others, because what we haven't accepted in us, we project in others. And this is a big part of shadow work, is to be very aware of the judgments we have of others, and then to be aware that there is obviously a self-judgment going on there as well, whether we have been judged in that way in the past, and therefore we justify that judgment by projecting it onto others, or we have a fear of being judged in that way. So welcome those who are joining. Let's just have a little cacao blessing. I'm going to aim to channel this rather than talk from, you know, my ego. So let's give this a go. If you are drinking cacao, you can bring it up to your heart in a moment. Otherwise, just rub your hands together. Have a little shake. Bring your hands to your heart. If you are drinking cacao, you can bring your cacao up to your heart, remembering that ceremonial grade cacao is a facilitator, opening the heart and connecting us to our soul consciousness. So you can gently close your eyes, let yourself arrive. Welcome yourself into a space where you can let the mind relax, let the heart open, and be willing to receive the codes that will allow your own shift from any wounded aspects of the feminine into the transmutation of those wounds so that the divine aspect shows itself in you, in your life today, as you embrace another piece of yourself, as you claim back another piece of yourself. May we all be willing to accept our wounds, to love them up, and to not allow them to be reasons to push love away, to push opportunity away, to push success away, whatever that means to you. We all deserve to thrive. And we're all doing the very best we can. And we're all learning all of the time how to evolve our consciousness in changing times. So Mama Cacao, I call on you to help me be a pure channel of divine grace, a channel of the divine feminine, with the intention of melting the hearts and softening the wounds, and the womb space that we all grew in, whichever one that was, whose ever it belonged to. So that we can all feel we truly belong in the womb of the Divine Mother, the Cosmic Mother. We have a right to be here. And it is our time to shine, to step forward in service to humanity, in service to the ascension of planet Earth, for the highest good of all. And may we each intend to seed our own version of paradise on earth, in alignment with the win-win-win in everything and the highest good of all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So just to anchor that intention, I'm going to sound the sound Ma into the earth, Om into the universe, and An from our hearts to each other. And if you're new to this, we're activating our connection to the earth chakra and crystalline grid, the soul chakra and divine mind, and the heart chakra, the higher heart chakra, and the divine human heart grid. Deep breath in. Just allow divine grace to flow down through you. You can relax your hand now. Open your left palm to receive. And then draw your nose in a circle around you, round in front of you, to establish your sphere of compassion, the container of your energy field. It's symbolic, it's like a portal. And we draw the nose up and down to connect Source and Gaia through our bodies. Inhale, exhale, turn the head to the left and just acknowledge the past. Breathe out, let it go. It's not who you are, it's just who you've been through. You get to change everything today. And inhale, center, and exhale, positive anticipation to the future. Whatever you've been hearing, whatever you've been fearing, just imagine for a moment that the path is technicolor. It is shimmering, golden, shining, rainbow stardust. And it's calling you to step forward into your brilliance, to remember who you are and the part you have to play. And then inhale, center, exhale, drop your chin towards your heart. Let the smile in your heart find you. This is your divine essence, that spark that is the divine in you. The combination of the divine masculine, feminine, and inner child all held together. It resides in your heart. The wounded aspects of you reside in your solar plexus, and the bridge is built between the two. And the healing comes as we aspire, we ascend, we intend to be the best version of ourselves, to accept our vulnerability as strength, and to recognize that everything that we think makes us unlovable is actually the very reason we're here, to love those parts up and then show others how to do it. And I call on Divine Men, Divine Lady Nada to flow through me and to help me channel their frequencies so they can be felt and heard. Third eye activation, sacral chakra activation, earth chakra activation, soul chakra activation, heart chakra activation. So it is, so it shall be. And just feel a beautiful, beautiful column of golden love light anchoring through all of your chakras, all the way down through your tailbone, into your earth chakra, and right down to the heart of Gaia. Wrap and embed into the core of Mother Earth, the diamond core of the ascending earth paradigm, and see your golden roots expanding around the earth as well. So you're sitting, you're on the throne of the earth, and the earth is a globe, a golden orb shining. You see what color that beautiful diamond heart is of hers today for you. There's no right or wrong. Just bring that energy up through you like a fountain of delight, through your crown, through your heart, down your arms. And gently come back. Look. Okay, so last night I was in the bath. Actually came on the night before. I just sent out the details to my pre-booking list, and if you haven't yet got on the pre-booking list and you'd like to know about the retreat in September, please message me ASAP. It's open until Monday evening, and there are lots of benefits to joining it, including the special price for the retreat. But it's important to act now. So anyway, I've just done that, came on, like, well, a few days early, never mind, that's all right. And then yesterday, another long day, I was floored. So I was in the bath. My beloved husband was talking with me, and I was like, can't hear anything. Please put classical music on, really soft classical music. I feel like all of my energy field needs repairing right now. Welcome those who are joining. And I just lay there and listen. And then I started to feel these waves of this color, this red. It's not Bordeaux, it is amaranth red. Okay, the lighting isn't really giving it the best, but if you look up amaranth red, you'll see what I mean. And this is the light, this is the love of Mary Magdalene along with the gold. This is how I've been perceiving it. And to me, this comes from the earth up. This is the embodiment. I mean, Magdalene is the twin flame of Christ, right? So she is a divine being, but she operates in this earth plane. To me, I connect to her as earth energy, earth feminine, all right? And it comes through me from underneath me all the way up, and then Lady Nada comes down as the frequencies that temper this raw strength, this raw truth, and allows me to speak that truth with love rather than to be a bitch and be like, just shut up, can you just put something nice on, I don't want to hear. Darling, I'm really frazzled and need soothing. Could you please put some classical music on for me? Thank you. You know, it's being able to say what we need and what we want and to be heard in such a way that our wishes, our desires are wanting to be met. Whoever is hearing them wants to meet them, wants to serve, wants to accept, and to give you what you want. Like, this is the journey of us stepping from wounded to empowered. It's very important to hold that when I say empowered, I mean divine. And I want to talk a little bit about empowered because I think the word is challenging for us, especially we've used it for several generations now to move out of inequality, to move out of the perception that women are somehow secondary citizens, just like anyone of any race or creed, children, animals. You know, we don't respect life, but certainly in the masculine, feminine side, we are not lesser beings because we are female, because we don't have a penis, right? We're here with our own gifts, our own service, but we have been distorted through time, just like the masculine has. And as I said, the important aspect is to remember that most of us did not have this consciousness about us when we were actually growing our babies. Neither did our mothers, neither did our grandmothers, neither did our great-grandmothers. So whether you turned out a boy or a girl, or find that you don't fit in the gender you were born into, it doesn't change the fact that most of us We're born into a womb of fear, a womb of judgment, a womb of suppression, a womb of not feeling fully supported and held. And it is time now that we do this internal healing as the feminine in order to be able to actually do the healing in the world. Because as we actually do this inner work of loving and accepting all aspects of our being, we find it much easier to hold space and be compassionate for those who haven't yet taken that journey. There's a lot of projection in the world today. And I ended up in a situation recently where it to me was an example of what happens when you feel like you're building a bridge, but actually the other person is not ready for that bridge to be built. And so it will be perceived as an attack. It will be perceived as threatening. And then we get the backlash. Okay. So how many of you have had other women say to you, you can't show up like that. You can't say that. It's not right to do it that way. Shame on you. Who do you think you are? You should be ashamed of yourself. That's a great one, right? That's a big thing in Greece. We have dropisu, which is shame on you, right? And I've seen it shouted at quite a lot of the marches recently. Well, every march I've been to, and it to me, it kind of lowers the tone a little bit, because it reminds me of when people were hung, they were burnt, they were guillotined, and people used to go and watch and basically, use their energy and project their anger on those that were being killed. And we all have this persecution history. We all have either being the ones that persecuted or got persecuted, right? So it's in our bloodlines. It's not, whether you believe in reincarnation, whether you believe in soul consciousness, hopefully you do, you wouldn't be here if you weren't, but just in the bloodline memory. And we know that trauma passes from one generation to the next when it's unprocessed. And we are basically the living descendants of everyone who's ever existed through all of time, right? So let's really get into this. I did a little bit of research. Hey, Caroline, good to see you. I'm glad you can hear me too. So how do we at this point use our raw rage, our raw power, and be seen, be heard, and be responded to in such a way that instead of being thwarted and blocked, the pathways open for us? That's the question I have, because I feel whilst there are a lot of people at the moment who are aware, that whatever is being projected in the mainstream is not a pure story. Okay, there are a lot of distortions that are going on. Now, what the truth is difficult to fathom because there are so many layers of distortion. And I see the 3D narrative is the narrative of fear expressed in the mainstream. So any channel that you turn on, anything that is terrestrial, anything that is the radio. And then the fourth dimensional fear triggering narrative is in all the alternate media, right? There's this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And, all I see in the end is if I just take the language out and I just feel the vibration, I feel the vibration of fear in 3D, I feel the vibration of fear in 4D. And I see a lot of people that think they're doing good, just road running, doing this, but their energy is just in pure fear. So they're not being effective. They create more fear in their energy field. They're therefore attracting other beings to them that are fearful. And that is what we're doing. So this is a well-meaning feminine, okay, if we are in our feminine bodies, that is doing her best to alert everybody to the danger around, but she's in so much fear herself that she's not in her divine feminine state. She's not in a state where she can be effective, because when you trigger fear, you could say we are in a genuine life-threatening situation here. And I'm not really talking about the mainstream narrative version of that. I'm talking about what happens if we don't change our path, right? If we don't actually really choose to go down the New Earth paradigm rather than the New World Order. And what's the difference? Well, the example that we all have to face and the decision we have to make is, do we want to operate like China does? Do we want to operate the way Hong Kong does? And if you don't know much about that, I was listening to something the other day where I was hearing that in Hong Kong, they're seeking to replace judges in the judicial system with AI. You think about that. In China, we have a situation where everybody is surveyed all of the time through their phones and awarded points for being good citizens. And what that really means is doing what the government tells you to do. And the interesting thing is that many of the people there don't feel that that's a bad thing. They think it's a good thing because you're shamed for, maybe breaking a law, and you are praised for acting in alignment with the law. And that's fine if the laws are just laws, but what if they're not? What if actually they're not okay? Remember in China, back in the day, and this is genuine, this is real. I remember that I was telling stories about this when I was teaching a lot of pregnancy yoga and training pregnancy yoga teachers, which included working with training obstetricians, midwives, doulas, and health visitors, by the way. So this wasn't just yoga teachers, although that's important too. When we had the one-child policy, you had enforced abortion forced upon you in China. If you were pregnant again and you had your child, you were forced to have an abortion. You were literally taken to the hospital and forced to have a termination. Now, when we start to talk about crimes against women, it's one thing a man doing that, right? It's quite another thing when a woman comes to your door, or a woman is the person who is performing that particular procedure because that is the law of the land. And this is what I mean. There is a lot of forgiveness that we need to do towards ourselves and each other for how we have perpetuated the cycles of limitation and control and domination. And part of this is rage. We will awaken a rage within us. We want to roar like lionesses. And my God, why do you think we have been suppressed for so long? We're frigging powerful as. Our ability, our love. You've heard the stories. Child's under a car, mother finds the strength to lift the car up and get the child out. That is how frigging powerful we are. Us little flamey things, right? And so, think about where the word hysterectomy came from. Hysterical women. Wombs were removed because women were hysterical. What's hysterical? An emotional woman, right? Now, a woman whose emotions are being ignored, how is she going to come across? What's she going to sound like? That's not nice, right? And so just shut her up, stop her. Now, how much is this connected to our sexual shame? How much is this connected to what we've been told that we actually need to be in order to be worthy of love, worthy of a man, worthy of marriage? Like, think about the early conditioning you received. Women should know their place. Children should be seen and not heard. Men should always pay. I don't know what your stories were, but these are some of the stories that came my way. So I invite you just to be open to what I'm saying and to explore this with me. I'm just going to bring up something that I was reading earlier about our internal masculine and feminine energies, because this is a big part of the retreat, is us seeing what's still in the shadow and loving it up. So the wounded masculine is controlling, aggressive, withdraws, avoids, is too competitive, abusive, and unstable. The wounded feminine, and this is according to Sarah Lewis, but I've just been doing a little research, is insecure, needy, codependent, manipulative, inauthentic, over-emotional, victim. Now I want you to think about this. The term gaslighting could probably say might relate more to the wounded feminine than the wounded masculine, right? Yet it plays out a lot in relationships between men and women where the masculine is gaslighting the feminine. So this is where I want to highlight that the wounded masculine exists in the woman, me as a woman, and the wounded feminine exists in the man. We also have the wounded feminine in us as women, and the men have the wounded masculine in them as men. So what would the divine counterpart of these wounds look like? So a divine masculine, for example, within us would be deeply present, doesn't judge, is supportive, has discipline, is focused, logical, confident, protective, honest, accountable, has integrity, is humble, has boundaries, offers stability and security, and is responsible. Those are quality attributes of an empowered masculine, divine masculine. Let's just say this, the divine father, God, right? Divine feminine, goddess, Intuitive, grounded, receptive, reflective, strong, boundaries, empathetic, compassionate, magnetic, supportive, vulnerable, authentic, flows through life effortlessly, surrendered, open, trusting, creative. Is she passive? Well, let's look at this slightly differently. Let's look at the masculine as Shiva, the feminine as Shakti. And it's been described to me in different ways, but one way that Shakti was described to me is like having, on its own, Shakti is like the energy of 35-year-olds in a classroom without a teacher, right? And you could say that the masculine, the Shiva, is the teacher, the direction, the holding of that energy. If this offends you or it triggers you, just stay with me on this a little bit. Another way we could look at this is that the Shiva element, the masculine, is the direction, and the Shakti is the energy that drives that direction. If you point in a direction, or if you put your car in a certain direction, it's not going to go anywhere unless it's got energy to drive it. But the actual direction we're going in is determined as the masculine. It's the one-pointed focus. Whereas the feminine is the receiver, the receptacle. Now, is that receptacle all fluffy and flimsy? No, it's got to be a strong container to hold all that energy, right? But the masculine is the driving force, is the arrow, is the part that points. And we need both within us. But if you've got a wounded masculine masquerading inside of you as an empowered feminine, that's where we really want to look at what's going on, because there are so many women that have already stepped forward that are doing everything they can to empower women to use their voice, to make choices that are internal choices rather than giving their power away to external authority. But when we're fearful, we don't trust ourselves. We always look outward rather than inward because we've been trained to do that. And so if we see our empowerment as women as being assertive, aggressive, not taking no for an answer, basically being willing to just be confrontational all the time, because our perception of not being empowered is to be passive, is to just take it, whatever is said, to not speak our truth, etc. Can you see how that sense of empowerment is a reaction to the weakness, okay, to the perceived weakness? Because if we are going to really be a force for good in this world as women, we need to know that when it's absolutely necessary, we can cultivate the strength we need to, if we are being attacked, to counterattack and get that threat out of the way, right? That means we've got tremendous power in us, and we recognize that power. But just like a martial arts master who knows that they could kill in one little, you use that power incredibly wisely. You don't just roar because you can roar, right? So this is why this energy of Magdalene and Nada is so important right now. And it's really beautifully described. I don't know if you saw it, but I wanted to just share this with you. Dawn, so there was an MP, I'm going to just not use the words too much, but there was an MP, black lady, who spoke up in London at the House of Parliament. It wasn't so long ago, it went viral. And she basically stood up, called a spade a spade. She didn't swear. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't unkind. But she spoke the truth as she saw it. And she called the leader of this country a liar 3 times. Now, you could ask the question, do any of the men who are currently in our political system really represent the divine masculine? I would say, can our political system actually house a divine masculine or a divine feminine? I don't think it's set up for that. Anyway, she's there giving all the reasons why. She talked about misleading, first of all, and then she called it straight out liar. Now, there's another feminine there, and this is what I mean about the divine and the wounded. So the other feminine is the lady of the house who's keeping order. Order in the house. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, whatever. It's just like a joke, isn't it? Have you seen the men in there all go, here, and boo? Like, This is like being in assembly at school. It's embarrassing. You're the people that are running our country, making decisions for my future, my children's future. Oh dear. Right? Like seriously, that's how I see it. Anyway, back to the women. So we've got the lady of the house, not. Please consider the language that you're using in the house. Please consider, she gave her 3 warnings before Dawn got kicked out. The point is, there's a representation here of the divine feminine being in her power, speaking it, calling it out. And then the wounded feminine going, shh, shh, don't say that. You're breaking the rules. Shh, shh, we don't do that. That's bad. That's going to lead to us being punished. Shh, 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 don't. Because if you say that, all of this is going to fall down and none of this is going to be real. And that's what happens. You see the feminine disempowering the feminine in the maternity services. You see it in politics. You see it in the judicial system. You see it in the police. You see it in the educational system. You see it everywhere. And it is so important that we call it out and we own it. And I actually don't like the words call it out, but I think they need to be used that way because we need to say, hold on a minute. I'm not here to dominate you. I'm not here to be more powerful than you so I feel safe. If you haven't read the book Sex at Dawn, I highly recommend it. It's kind of a history of sexuality through the ages and the big question, are we essentially monogamous or polyamorous by nature, right? Interesting question to ask. But what it does, it takes us back in time to when we were a matriarchal system before we were a patriarchal system. Was it any better? I think men were emasculated in the matriarchal system from what I have understood. But then in the patriarchal system, we have women dominated and suppressed. So we're moving into a time not where the feminine is rising to dominate again and to emasculate, but to actually own the imbalance of power that has occurred, both in the masculine rule and in the feminine rule, and say, how do we co-rule here? How do we allow the divine masculine, feminine, and divine child to coexist within us and to live consciously, to speak words in a compassionate way? There's such a thing as non-violent communication. Can't say I'm trained in it, but I've got a great friend called Emma who is. And, I think in today's world stage, when we look at what's going on and the way that the media reports things, we look at the way that politicians speak, we can say that there is a tremendous disservice to our divine selves. The wounds are running the show, okay? So my invitation really now at this point is for us to be opening a dialogue and saying, what do we want instead of this? What would it look like to actually be able to honor our truth, speak it with love, not attack others with it, but hold others accountable through it? And how can we be heard in such a way that those minds that are completely closed, don't want to hear us, haven't got the power to suppress us, and those who are in a stage of starting to awaken can feel us in their hearts, and in such a way, through that feeling, the mind is activated, the divine mind is activated. Oh, look at this. Ooh, that's very cool. So, again, I'm posing more questions than answers because none of us want to put other people's noses out of joint. At the same time, suppressing something to keep other people happy is not the answer. And we're all having to be incredibly creative in how we share truth in today's age, because we can't really speak other than in code, which is important actually, because part of speaking in code is what is awakening us from the dream, if you like, the illusion. But if we want it to be a graceful, easy and joyful path, then we can't shake everybody awake. And walking around hysterically trying to wake people up, it ain't going to do anything other than put them into shock. This is what I've seen, right? It's not going to actually do anything other than shut them down further. So it's through creativity that we can really empower ourselves and each other. Now, a little bit about nature as feminine. And again, this is why we're hanging out in the swank pad of nature for the Divine Feminine Retreat, because, we've learned to value material things as part of our success, right? We've forgotten the bounty of nature. And part of what's happening in the world, and has been for a long, long time, is the desire to dominate nature. Now, I remember 2 modules in my university. When I studied at university, I studied education and environmental studies. So, how we're educated or how we are indoctrinated, and also our relationship to the environment. And one module was globalization. The other module was nature as feminine, right? And these 2 modules blew my mind. I wish I could remember my lecturer's name, but she really inspired me. So some 22, 23 years ago, I knew what was going to be happening today. It was all set in motion. A new world order. This was talked about, a one world economy. This idea that we're basically all just going to be the same, hive mind. And in the Nature as Feminine module was this idea that ever since we went from a matriarchal to a patriarchal system, what actually has happened is we've started to own things. Before that, we were nomadic. Before that, we didn't own. We moved and we negotiated and we cooperated. And this is how I understand it. I say I was there in a previous life, but, I'm just sharing with you what I've understood. I'm not saying it's 100% accurate. And this is the other thing about history that's important to remember. Just remind me to say something about history and how it's written, because imagine how history is going to be written today and what people are going to say about it tomorrow and the different perceptions we actually have of it. Anyway, nature is wild. It might seem to the untrained eye that nature has no rhyme and reason, that if left to her own devices, nothing will be in balance. And yet nature has a delicate ecosystem. Look at the rainforests, right? Look at how they operate. So left alone, nature has this capacity to keep regenerating and to keep everything in balance. But no, we come in, the wounded masculine and the feminine, and the wounded masculine and the masculine, and decide that, no, we need to control this nature thing. So, we're going to start to own pieces of land, just like we own our wives, our women. We're going to dominate this land. We're going to make it work for us. So you end up with monocrops. You've heard about this in farming. Then you end up with the issue that the soil is depleted. Then you end up with the issue that you need to put pesticides and herbicides and all sorts of crap into the earth in order to get it to do what you want it to do. And you're always fighting it. Even with the GM advances, here we were given these seeds that were supposed to be totally resistant to weeds. And what's happened? We now have super weeds. And not only do we have super weeds, then you create a different version of the GM, and then you have a super weed. Take this to the human body, the delicate ecosystem of the human body that actually, in the days of old, when we did manage to coexist with nature rather well, if we weren't very well, we knew how to work with nature to create balance in our bodies, right? This is why the witches were burnt, because they knew how to make nature's pharmacy more potent and how to utilize this for our own well-being. And always with reverence to nature, always, like never trying to take and rape and pillage, as we have been doing with the mining, with the oil, with all the things we've done. It's kind of scorpionic, isn't it? Even our medical system is like jab, test, prod, poke, cut. It's all like designed to sort of cut away what we don't like, to control. And, it saves lives. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm just looking at what is coming in the future. We look at quantum health. We look at medical beds that are coming. We look at all sorts of advances in technology that don't require the way we currently go about things in medicine and science, etc. And yes, what happened? So I lost my train of thought now. Let me come back. So we knew how to have this fine balance. And then somewhere, something to do with Rockefeller, something to do with wars, which again, we start to look at the history of war, and the way war is being taught to us is that, it's just what happens and we all have to rally to protect our freedom. And yet, in the name of freedom, so many freedoms are being taken away. It doesn't make sense. The way I look at war now is very much as a population control tactic. Oh, too many young, strong men out there. That could be a threat to the establishment. So let's get rid of them. We need a war. We need another war. Now, the way history is written from the perspective of who? Each nation has its own perspective. You've got Wikipedia too. But ultimately, having lived in different countries, you know, my background, I've been to state school, I've been to international school, I have been to private independent school, been to national schools both in Greece, Australia, and in England, international school in Singapore, and private co-independent school in the UK. So I had quite a different perspective from these different types of schoolings and seeing the way that things have been taught as well. And what I'll say with this is that basically it's not the same. Our perception is not the same. We're not all taught the same things. But what we get in our textbooks, we take as fact. We're not taught to question it. My sister was talking. She went to Millfield School, you know. That's a pretty posh school. She went there for a couple of years. And, you know, she wasn't taught to question anything. This is the way it is. This is what we do. And we're all taught that. And so if I bring this back to our physical health, our well-being, and we talk about holistic health versus the current system we have, which so many people feel is like the absolute advance, the pinnacle of modern science and medicine. And we're all like scratching our heads going, don't you see the problems it's creating, utilizing this system as our main system? You know, you start to try and protect the body against a particular virus. You start to try and protect your body against specific things. You put the whole ecosystem out of balance, just like we do with nature. When we start to try and control aspects, you know, what are the problems with farming at the moment? The quality of the meat, the vegetables, etc. We know the soils are depleted. We know that's the result of our practices. I don't know if you saw Clarkson's farm, but in the end I was like, why the fuck has this guy done this? He's ended up with nothing in his pocket, busted it. Why would anyone do it? Furthermore, look at the health of all the farmers. I was looking at the people in the actual documentary going, whoa, you've all got massive bellies. None of you look very healthy. This isn't a good recipe or a good advertisement for farming. Yet we know about biodiversity. We know about biodynamic farming. We know about multiple crops working together to support each other, to protect each other from insects, so that we don't need the methods that are being reported as the answer to our global set threats and situations, whether that's famine, overpopulation, environment, etc. So back to the original point, from wounded to divine feminine. We need to understand, this is my take on this, we need to understand that the way that we have perceived things to this point is distorted, and we have been trained to see things in a distorted way. When we start to see through eyes of love, we realize that the way things are around us isn't necessarily the way they genuinely are. And, you know, if I was to write today down in history, and someone who's a medical doctor who maybe is pro the mainstream narrative, and a medical doctor who's in the alternate narrative, or one of the alternate narratives, or a politician or a statistician, depending on whether they are supporting the narrative or not, we would have very different versions of history looking back, right? So who are the people that write history? Who are the people that write the textbooks? It's a question for you. And how are we now going to evolve beyond the wounds? And that's why the leadership retreat is there. I mean, I am deeply committed to rewriting the narrative and inviting everybody else to also do the same. What do we want instead? How do we want everything to look? It's so important, if we know we can see a problem, to start considering what the solution is. And how can we heal ourselves from the distortions? Well, that's through radical self-love. It's through willing to explore what our beliefs are, how we currently see things, what we feel being empowered means, what we feel it means to be in our truth, what we feel it means to be in our power, and to question, is that genuinely empowered? Is that genuinely heart-centered? Or is this another reaction? Because what I say to my clients is, we are conditioned from a very early age. Our time in the womb, we're just absorbing the emotions of our mother without thinking thoughts. The brain's developing all the time. It's not fully developed even until we're 22 years old, right? So it's not going to be fully developed in the womb. We're not thinking in the womb. We're absorbing information in the womb. And so we have different brainwave states as we get older. And it doesn't really kick in until about 7-8 years old that we start to really question from a sort of a curious, really curious mind that's trying to piece things together. So the conditioning that we have means that when we're growing up, we're either going to do as we're told, as in as our family and our culture and our religion said, and we become carbon copies because we want the approval of our establishment, which is our environment, those around us, or we do a 180 rebellion. Okay, we do the exact opposite. We do what I call throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And what this means is we we basically rebel against everything we were given, right, rather than some of it. And that's not a balanced state either. And that's what I see has been happening between the patriarchy and the matriarchy, is there's been this total rebellion of each extreme. We've got to find our balance in the middle. And so what happens again with this is we end up in a place where we have to ask the question, well, if this is just a reaction, where's my middle point? Where can I accept the best and leave the rest? Where can it stop being either or and it can be and this and more? Because we're doing this in the collective as well. We're rebelling from one state to another, or we're totally accepting it. And I can't say, I've been very much showing up as part of the resistance, if you like, as asking questions. I'm not just taking the narrative and believing it, because I don't. And I probably would be a lot more compliant if I felt there was more accountability and transparency, but I'm just seeing massively exacerbated distortion. But all that's highlighting to me is how distortion has been prevalent my whole life. I've never been fed the truth. I'm recognizing that now. None of us have. We have to be discerning to discover what that truth is. And it's somewhere in the middle of the extremes, right? I mean, anything is possible. A mind like this now, anything is possible, right? But you can get really lost in that. So when we're in our empowered state as divine feminine, we know, our womb knows, our heart knows, we're clairsentient, we're clairvoyant, we're clairaudient, we're claircognizant. All of our extrasensory perceptions are alive. And when we are in our empowered state as the divine masculine, we're incredibly respectful of the divine feminine's power to know. It's not questioned. In the days of old, when the women used to bleed, they used to go to the red tent. They would be take care of each other, and they would be taken care of for 3 days. None of their duties were for them to do. The men would take over. And they would dream. They'd come back, and then the tribesmen would gather with them and say, what did you dream? What were the dreams you had? They were seen as prophetic. I'm getting loads on this. So the grandmothers, the mothers, they would come and they would say, well, I dreamt this, I dreamt that, this is the direction we should go in. And then the masculine takes that on board and plans it and directs it, and the feminine energizes it. So we all have unique gifts. We don't need to dominate each other, but we do need to understand that the crimes that women have committed against women and the crimes that women have committed against men, the boys that they raised, the way they criticized, condemned, judged, put on them the way they should be, the way that we have all, projected fear onto the next generation in intention to keep them safe. All of this has to be looked at. All of this has to be owned. The self-forgiveness is essential. And in the same way, when we look at the masculine, let's just say you've got a male obstetrician and he likes to control births to the nth degree. Now, I did loads of womb work earlier in my career, like loads of early influences, womb psychology, womb ecology, womb surrounds, like rebirthing, etc., and understanding the impact of our birth. So one of the things I understood about, for example, men with very high obstetricians with very high cesarean rates in their women, very high intervention rates. We actually look back at their birth stories. Their own births were very complicated, and in their own perception as babies, they hurt mummy. So they're doing everything they can not to hurt mummy. Drug her, right? Don't let her go through the pain and the suffering that she went through, mummy went through. So if I hurt mummy, I'm going to do everything I can to stop this woman hurting. I don't want her to feel a thing. I want to control everything, so there's none of that going on. And they actually did a study. It was J&J, not my favorite company, that did a study. It was years ago now, probably about 30, 40 years ago. And this study was looking, I think, at a New York hospital. Please forgive me, the details are not great for me to recall. But what they did was they took the doctors who had the highest cesarean rates, and they offered them an opportunity to learn about their birth story, to rebirth, to go through a process of healing. And of course, you had self-selecting. So you had the doctors that were up for it and the doctors who weren't. So those who were went through this process, and those who weren't carried on as normal. Now, what happened? Those who went through the process of looking at their own birth story, the impact that had on them, etc., went from having the highest cesarean rates to the lowest cesarean rates in that hospital. And this has got to say a lot, okay? This has got to say a lot about how we're all doing the best we can, even the most controlling, dominating beings in this world, whether they're masculine or feminine, male gender or female gender. They're doing what they think is right to try and prevent pain. And this is the problem we have in this world. We don't deal with pain or death well. We see ourselves as finite. This is the only life we've got. We're terrified of pain because we don't know how to deal with it, primarily emotional and psychological, but also physical. And we're terrified of death. We sanitize death. We sanitize conception. We sanitize birth so that we don't feel. But then we become automatrons. Then we become easily manipulated. Then we become hive mind. So for us to really be divine humans, divine feminine, divine masculine, we've got to plug back into the heart and be willing to feel. And part of that is feeling the pain that has been there, that has been pushed away. Not to energize it, not to make more of it, but to release it. So this is the invitation, my friends. We have to rewrite the narrative. We have to open up a new story. We can't expect now, and this is more research that I've been doing, we can't expect the judicial system or the political system as it stands to save us. It's not going to. We actually have to create a whole new game. That's why I don't call myself a game changer. I'm a game maker. Thanks, Brenda Gabriel. You know, we need a new game. At the moment, we're playing chess, right? Just get rid of the chessboard. What's the new game we're going to play? We need to invent a new game. This is the invitation. This is why the Divine Feminine Retreat's been created. This is why I'm showing up all the time with Star Peace and Seeding the New Earth narrative. Because we know the problem. What is the solution? The discussion has to be had. What would this look like? So I'm inviting all of you, if you are local to the UK and you're feeling the heart call, you want to come and join me from the 17th to 19th of September, get in touch today. Don't delay. The 2nd of August, prices are going up for the retreat, and the pre-booking list is now. So anybody who's on that list gets first choices at the retreat. I've got a maximum of 10 places, no more. Okay. So it's really important, those of you who are feeling that you want to dream this new vision awake, you want to give birth to your divine feminine self, you want to love up the shadows of the feminine and the masculine within you to the point that they're no longer dominating and restricting you. You want to stabilize in 5D consciousness, which means you're no longer motivated by fear as your day-to-day motivation. In fact, you only ever have fear triggered when you need to move out to an impending danger, and you immediately settle. You're fine. Your baseline is just thrive, right? We also need to activate our divine wealth blueprint. So we stabilize in wealth. We expect always that our cup overfloweth. Whatever our bank account says, we know we can always access the resource we need, whether it's time, money, love, whatever it is. There is a bountiful amount of it available to each of us, but our conditioning limits us from receiving it. Also, each of us has a unique gift to share in this world in a way that really uplifts and empowers us. But we do need to move through the fear of persecution, love up the rejection, the abandonment, the betrayal wounds. You know, I run whole courses on this. That's what Fearless, Loved Up and Free is all about. It's what the super conscious co-creating method is all about. Actually meeting in physical and having a container, you know, of conception, pregnancy, birth and nurturing, so that those of us who are being called together can seed this new earth paradigm. That's the invitation of having a physical connection together rather than online. I very rarely do physical stuff anymore. This is that physical invitation to connect in the swank pad of nature, like with the most beautiful space. And I've just put it out. I'm trusting if it's gonna go, it's gonna go, it's gonna blow, and we are all seeding it energetically together. So drop me a message, come through. The heart call has gone out. Yesterday, this initiation I received was sending platinum heart threads out to everyone who was meant to come. So if you're feeling that pull, you're like, I want to know more, just drop me a message and I will send you the information, and then we'll continue the conversation from there. There are some very special, well, we're all special, but there are key women that need to come together right now. We are all a part of each other's puzzle, right? We're pieces of the puzzle. We're gathering together to create that unified field that will allow us to really share that truth in the world so that the hearts melt. And we need the Magdalene and Nada initiation so that we can temper that truth. We can speak it. We don't change it. We speak it. But it is heard rather than ignored, because the way we speak it is beautiful. And I'll give you that example to finish with. So yesterday when I was asking my beloved to not talk to me about different ways that one can do conservation in nature, and I asked him to put some classical music on. He tried 3 different channels before I actually listened, because the first one was so chilling, grating violins. The second one was just too intense. The third one was peaceful and I could hear it. And this is us fine-tuning our voice box so that we can be heard. Okay? So wow, I'm an hour in nearly. It's amazing. Thank you, those of you who joined me in this conversation, and I really look forward to your comments. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Please join my community through the Rosy Glow website. If you sign up and join the tribe, you get the free Star Salutation Prosperity Practice. It's where you can message me and give me your details so I can let you know about the retreat. And also, if you want to join me in rewriting the New Earth paradigm, I have a Facebook group called #StarPeace, Seeding the New Earth Narrative. And I invite you to join me. You can again message me through Facebook or Insta or wherever, and I'll send you the link. Please show up. You don't have to have the answers. Just need you to show up and explore yourself with me. That's what we're doing. We're allowing ourselves to just reveal what is there. So I'm going to leave that there. I love you lots. Thank you for hearing this, and may it just awaken within you everything that needs to awaken for you to drop into more of that authentic truth. I'll put in the comments what I just shared about the divine masculine and feminine for you as well. Okay? If you enjoyed it, share it with someone else. Look forward to seeing you in the retreat. If you're interested in Fearless, Loved Up and Free, or working with me one-to-one, go onto my website and book your breakthrough call. In itself, it's phenomenal, but that is the gateway that will open us up to everything else and see what you're ready for. All right? I love you loads. Take care. Namaste.